Welcome to Miss V, the Storyteller podcast. This podcast is for anyone who has lost their voice and want to get it back. I lost my voice at a very young age, and it took me years of pain and hurt to get it back. On this podcast, I will bring you personal stories that will make you laugh, cry, think, heal, and in some cases, propel you into making new and better choices. At the end of each story, I give you my thoughts about what happened and ask you probing questions. No one is perfect and no answer is wrong. So let's get started today with my special guest. I am so excited to have Gail Clanton as my special guest. Listen, y'all, Gail and I go so far back. Gail is the reason why it's called Miss V, the Storyteller podcast, because Gail has always called me Miss V, and I loved it. She has also helped me on my journey. When I first started to write, I sat down with her and I told her, I was like, listen, I have all these stories inside of me. And she gave me the best advice. She told me, just start writing. And that's exactly what I did. With that said, listen, y'all, I'm going to give Gail an opportunity to introduce herself to you all. So Gail, tell us about yourself.
Well, thank you, Miss V. Thank you very much for this invitation. I've been watching you grow and expand your audience and your influence, and I'm very proud of all the work that you've done. And thank you for this invitation. As you said, I'm Gail Clanton. I grew up in Washington, D.C., still live in the area, live right outside of D.C. in Maryland. My day job is I'm a marketing director at an alternative health company. But the job that I love, the job of my heart, is helping women tell their stories, just like you mentioned, in books and also in anthology. So some of these ladies that I've worked with have written their own books or are writing their own books. And then some of them have been a part of a large collection with individual stories. So I'm a writer at heart, and I enjoy helping other people write and get their stories told.
Yes, and she is amazing at it. I mean, and it's fun. It's not one of those things you go and you sit and you have a conversation with her or you have a meeting with her and it's boring. Never. You are so entertained, but you're also learning as well. She is phenomenal.
Oh, thank you.
So you're welcome. So I know that you have listened to almost all of my stories because, like I said, we go way back, and she was
Way
with
back.
me at the very beginning, and she has been such a great support system for me. But Gail, out of all the stories you listened to, what story resonated with you the most, or what story do you want to chat about today?
Well, the story that I want to chat about was one of the first ones you posted, and it dealt with losing your voice.
Yes, I remember that. That story was called, yes, Losing My Voice. And let me tell my audience a little bit about it, just in case you
Mhm.
haven't heard it. Basically, I explain and I tell basically, I lost my voice at the age of 6. I decided to stop talking. It was family dynamics, and I just stopped talking to stay out of trouble. You know, my dad was some of it, and he got it from my grandfather. My grandfather was a yeller, and he got it honestly, you know, and our parents, they do the best that they can, but it still, you know, kind of scared me, and I stopped talking, and it got to the point my dad had my mom take me to the doctor to have my ears checked because he thought something was wrong with my ears. Listen, y'all, wasn't nothing wrong with my ears. I was like, listen, this dude is not gonna keep yelling at me. So I played dumb, act like I couldn't hear nothing. And when he called me that morning and told me if nothing was wrong with my ears, when he got home, he was gonna tear my butt up. I was not a dumb child. I was very smart. When my dad got home, listen, he thought that I was deaf because at that doctor's appointment, I was not hearing nothing. They gave my mom medication to put in my ears and everything. So I saved my butt that day. But eventually I got my voice back at the age of 23. I went through 18 years of not talking. And let me tell you all, it was pure hell. But God gave me my voice back. So Gail, tell me, why did you like that story? What was it about the story that resonated with you?
Well, I like that story a lot because of a situation I had during a marriage
Hmm.
where I never stopped talking, but I did at several points not express my feelings as
Mm-hmm.
strongly as I should have,
Mm-hmm.
not for fear, like in your situation, but it was just easier. It was just easier to get along
Mm-hmm.
if you just kind of nod and say, yeah, okay, yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. So I really do feel as though I lost my voice. I lost my ability or my willingness to speak up, to share my opinions, all for the sake of just trying to get along. And so I felt like I did that too long. The marriage ultimately ended,
Mm-hmm.
probably would have ended sooner had
Oh.
I not, tried to keep things flowing, as I put in the book, trying to make my happily ever after come to pass.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because I think a lot of times we do that. We don't say things that we really know we should say, all for the sake of trying to keep the peace. So that's why that story really resonated with me, although it was not so much a physical silence
Mm-hmm.
that I went through, but I silenced my soul, I silenced my spirit, I silenced my spunk and my sparkle. As you know, I talk a lot about my sparkle.
Yes.
I
Yes.
silenced it, I stifled it. So that's why when I read or heard your story about the voice that you just kind of subdued, kind of,
Mm-hmm.
buried so that you wouldn't get in trouble.
Yes.
I buried my, I guess not necessarily the vocalizing, but I did not state the types of things that I needed to state to be true to who I was.
Well, that was a part of me as I grew older, because I didn't get my voice back until I was 23, but I did the same thing you did. I went from a child just not talking out of fear of my father. And as I grew, I continued that same thing. I continued with that decision to stop talking. And I did the same thing you did. It was just
Yeah.
easier not to say anything. And I believe that that's a part of losing your voice as
Yeah.
well, because you don't speak up, and it's not necessarily out of fear, but it's a decision. You know what, I'm not even going to say anything. I'm just going to let it go because I don't feel
Yep.
like arguing with nobody today. Or in my case, it's like, you know what, I'm not even going to say anything because I don't feel like going there. I already feel bad, because I went through a whole lot. I got bullied. I went through a whole lot because I wouldn't speak up, but I didn't think I had a voice. I didn't have a
Mm-hmm.
self-esteem, and I didn't think that anything that I had to say was important. So it was like,
Mm-hmm.
what's the point of talking? So, in essence, I kind of did the same thing with you. That was a skill that developed, a negative skill that
Right.
developed as I grew.
Yeah.
And just choosing not to say anything. And I think a lot of women do that. I really think we do that. I think we do that just to, like you said, to keep the peace. Because don't nobody want to keep arguing with other people. Nobody wants to keep going there,
Yep.
because especially when you learn somebody and you
Right.
know that person, and you say,
Right.
okay, if I say something, we're gonna end up having an argument, or I'm gonna end up going there, and I just don't feel like doing it.
Exactly. And sometimes, I mean, honestly, I'm hearing what you're saying, and sometimes you're exactly right. You make that decision. Is it worth it?
Hmm.
And sometimes I think that decision can sometimes kind of bounce back on us, and you start to think, well, am I worth it? And see, that's where it gets kind of dangerous to me.
Yes.
Am I worth the argument that may happen? But is my opinion worth it? Is my self-esteem worth it? Am I worth going that step to really state this is what I think, and let the chips fall wherever the chips gonna fall?
Yeah,
In some instances, yeah, it is worth it. We do need to speak up.
we
Sometimes,
do.
you think about it like there's situations at work. You say it's blue, I say it's red. All right, it's really red in my mouth, but you want to say it's blue, it don't matter. You know, you know,
Absolutely.
it don't matter. But there are times when it does matter. And so that's the way I picked up on your story. I just loved it. I just loved it. The fact
Thank
that
you.
we
But I
do
do want to
lose
ask you this before we
our
go into the
identity.
I do want to ask you this before we go into the next one. Do you think, well, let me ask you this. At any part in your marriage, did you start speaking up for yourself? And do you think that had something to do with the fact that it ended because you were just tired of just not saying anything and you start speaking up for yourself?
Yeah, because I think what happened, you go along for a while and you're just trying to keep the peace. And then eventually it's like, okay, enough already. And
Mm,
so as I started speaking up and speaking out more and more, the arguments got worse and
mm,
worse. And then that got to the point where it's like, let's just go.
yeah.
He was ready to go because he was tired of hearing me fuss. And I was ready to go because I was tired of fussing.
Yes.
So it was like mutual, separation. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's uncomfortable sometimes.
Yeah, but I think that's it's also with me. When I did get my voice back, I got to the point where I was just tired. I was tired of
Mhm.
being hurt. I was tired of people talking across me. I was tired of being bullied. I was tired of feeling less than. I was just tired. And at that point,
Yeah.
I became a Christian. And I'm like, okay, God, I don't think a Christian, I don't think I'm supposed to be this way. I think it's supposed to be a little bit better,
Uh-huh.
and that's when I, prayed and asked the Lord to give me my voice back. But yeah, I think you just get to the point where you're just tired. And
Mhm.
just like, listen, it just has to be better than this. And in your case
Right.
and mine, it was a lot better.
Right.
Yes. So, do you have a story that's similar? I know you talked about your marriage a little bit. So, can you share a little bit more about that? Was it like one particular day when you just say, I'm just tired of arguing with this man, so I'm going to choose not to say anything anymore? Or was it, over a period of time? What was it, that helped, that made you make that decision? Like in my case, it was my dad. I was just sick of yelling. So I'm like, why I'm not saying nothing. So it was that
Mhm.
for me.
I think for me, it's just you just get tired of disagreeing
Mm,
on simple matters, you just get tired and you begin to realize that you have stifled a lot of your own self, all for the sake of trying to keep things going. And
mhm.
so it just got to be too much. And then when we separated, I thought the divorce would be quick. I thought it would be, pretty easy because it was a mutual decision.
Okay.
He was ready for me to go and I was ready to go. But it was not nothing like that. It was very, very difficult. And I think it was during that divorce process that I really got my voice back
Oh,
because
really?
because I realized that if I was the Gail that I had been in the marriage, I had too much to lose. So
Okay.
I had to come out fighting. And for me, Miss V, it was not like a new Gail had emerged. It was the old Gail coming back because
Okay.
I had not been that voiceless person. I talk about that. I had not grown up in a voiceless situation, but I lost some of my spunk, some of my sparkle, some of
Mhm.
my voice in
Mhm.
the midst of the marriage. So when I got out of it, that's when I felt my voice coming back. And that's when I became reacquainted with the pre-married Gail.
Oh, I like that. You
Oh
came
yeah.
reacquainted.
I
I
became
love
reacquainted.
that.
So that fight, that spunk that I always had was just allowed. It was like it was free. It was like,
Really?
okay, now you can be who you were raised to be, who you were supposed to be, who God created you to be. Just like you were saying, we're not created to feel stifled or to feel
Mhm.
less than or to feel as though somebody else's opinion is always right and ours is always wrong. We're not supposed to be like that.
You're right. Well, let me ask you this now. Now, I know you, and I remember when you got married. I remember, even going through the divorce and all that. I remember that. But for me, you've always been Sunshine Gale. I've seen some moments where, you what, but in my all the years that I've known you've always been sparkle, sunshine, Gail, positive and all that. So for me, when I got my voice back, as you know, I went from not talking to cussing people out. I went full, I was laying people out. I was laying people out and all of that. I mean, I was like, listen, did you do that? Did you in your with your husband when you got the old Gail back, was she like a pumped up Gail, like a different, or was she still the same Gail that was prior to the marriage?
She was a kinder, gentler Gail.
Okay.
Because she had been through some stuff. See, the old Gail really hadn't been through nothing, bless her heart, but she hadn't been through too much of nothing.
Right.
She had, grown up in a nice family and had opportunities to go to school and came home from school and got a job, and things had gone very automatically, like the way that you would think they should go. She hadn't been through nothing. So the new Gail is a lot kinder, a lot more generous, a lot more patient, because I've been through something. Now I know now I know. I'm like I say, I'm a lot more generous with my time, a lot more generous with my resources, because I've had mine challenged. I've needed that ear to have somebody listen to me. I've had those days when I had to look at my bank account real carefully, before I wrote a check. So yeah, I think I emerged as a much better version of who I was.
That's good. Yeah, that's good. At least you didn't have to go back on your knees and ask the Lord to give you a medium like me. Because I had to go back on my knees. I'm like, listen, Lord, I can't go on like this. And God honored my prayer. Praise the Lord. So let's answer the question at the end. I think we might have covered it a little bit.
Okay.
The question that I had at the end, as you all know, that I always ask questions at the end of my story. I share my thoughts and then I ask a question. And the question was, have you ever made a bad decision when you were younger that carried on too long?
Probably the whole thing of not speaking up, not speaking my mind, being too concerned about other people's feelings, and putting my own too far back on the back burner.
That's the same thing with me. Exactly. And then the second part, it says, if so, why are you still carrying a bad decision? And I think both of us are no longer carrying those bad
Not like we were.
Yeah.
No.
And I think when we first met, I was just finding my voice, because I don't know if you remember, I didn't do a lot of talking. I did not do a lot of talking, if you remember. But now, you know me, my mouth was cold. I can talk now. I don't care. I speak up for myself. I'm like, Lord, please roll her back up, roll her back in, because her mouth, she is on. So before we go,
love it.
Listen, I have thoroughly enjoyed you, Gail. I learned a little bit more about you, because I've always thought that I've always felt you've been such a kind and a nice person. So I'm even afterward. So I'm like, gosh, she went through all of that and she's still nice, Gail. And that is a compliment to you, because some people who've gone through what you've gone through would come out on the other side, like me, cussing folk out and going it off. So I have to give that to you, girl, that you stayed true to yourself. So
for that.
I know that you have a business.
Yeah.
I know that you are an author and you have books out, because listen, audience, I have written a book. I was a co-author, and it's called Living in the Key of Joy, where I actually have that story in here about me losing my voice. And I shared it with some other people, and Gail was the person who published the book. Is that correct? She has some other books and some other things. So Gail, tell us all about, if somebody's looking to write a book, get a book published or anything, give us your information.
Okay, thank you, Ms. B. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for being in the first anthology, Living in the Key of Joy.
Yes.
Your story was very, very well accepted by a lot of people who could relate to what you wrote about. So my very first book is called Sparkle in the Rain. And I talk a lot about the idea of sparkling, because I want people to recognize it comes from the verse in Matthew that talks about letting your light shine. And I think that women, particularly women of a certain age, our light ought to be so bright that we sparkle. So
Right.
that book is called Sparkle in the Rain, and it's a part my own personal story, it's part devotional, where I talk a little bit about the divorce experience, and then I share some of the writing that I did as I went through it. And then I have two anthologies. The first one, volume one
Mhm.
of Living in the Key of Joy, which you, Miss B, were a part of. And then we just published volume two of Living in the Key of Joy. I'm also a writing coach where I have
Mhm.
6-month classes where I help take people from beginning to end. So we start out with their idea for their book, and at the end, they will have a published book. So my website is gailclanton.com, GailClanton.com. My company is Clanton Communications.
Mhm.
So I am here to help people tell their stories in print. And I'm also a writer myself. So I do marketing and copywriting.
Yes. See,
So thank
that
you.
that is why Gail needed to be on the show, because if there's anyone out there who is trying to write a book, publish a book, or need help in writing a book, she is the one. She helped me with my story. You know, when I have questions about things, she is my go-to person. And let me tell you, she is authentic, loving, and kind. You won't feel bad. Even if it's not that good, she has the gift to help you realize it. And you're laughing. It's like, did she just tell me I need to rewrite that? Because it's that she has a gift to make you feel good about changes. So yes. So yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for being a guest on
Thank
my
you.
show.
Thank you. I really appreciate the invitation. Thank you very much.
Thank you for taking the time to listen. I pray this episode will make you think about your childhood memories and how they've impacted your life. If you like what you hear, please follow me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, or you can email me at valelliot@gmail.com. That's VALISONELLIOT @gmail.com. All right, friends. Thanks for listening. Bye.